The morning of my graduation felt like a beginning, and an ending I hadn't yet recognized. I woke with a flutter in my stomach, the kind I used to get as a child on holidays. For once, I let myself believe the day would be different. My family wasn't perfect. Far from it. But surely they would show up for something as important as this. Months of imagining their faces in the audience had built a fragile sort of hope inside me, one that I carried like a glass ornament. I dressed carefully, curling my hair the way my mother used to compliment when she still bothered to look at me long enough to notice. I steamed my gown, smoothed the edges, and posed in front of the mirror, trying to see myself through their eyes. Maybe today I would finally be enough. I checked my phone every few minutes while getting ready. No messages, no calls, not even a sarcastic text from my younger brother. I told myself that was fine. They were probably getting ready too. They were always late to everything. Stubborn optimism is its own kind of delusion, and I had perfected it after years of craving affection that never came. I ordered an Uber and rode to campus, watching other students on the sidewalks holding flowers and signs from their families. The city felt alive with celebration, and for a moment it softened the edges of my nerves. Maybe my family would surprise me. Maybe they'd be waiting by the auditorium doors with balloons and embarrassing cameras. By the time I reached the campus playground, our designated meeting spot, no one was there. I texted the family group chat, "Hair," and added a smiley face I instantly regretted. I sat on a bench, gown draped across my lap, and watched time slip past me. 30 minutes, 45, an hour. The sun climbed higher, the air warming, but I felt cold. Families filtered past me on their way inside. Some parents waved at me, mistaking my loneliness for independence. A few professors stopped to congratulate me, and I forced a smile that felt too tight on my face. Eventually, the ushers told me it was time to head in. I hesitated a moment longer, staring at my phone, praying for a last-minute call. Nothing. I stood and entered the auditorium alone, finding my seat among the hundreds of graduates. The noise of excited families rang like distant joy I had no access to. I tried to focus on the ceremony, but every clap, every cheer, every proud shout from the crowd felt like a reminder of what I didn't have. My name was called. I walked across the stage with my heart pounding in my ears. The applause felt polite and personal, no one cheering specifically for me. I smiled for the camera and accepted my diploma with hands that trembled slightly. Out of instinct, I looked toward the seats again, scanning the crowd for someone, anyone, who belonged to me. Still nothing. It shouldn't have surprised me, but hope is stubborn even when it's hurting. After the ceremony, I walked outside and stood off to the side as my classmates fell into their families' arms. Mothers cried. Fathers beamed. Siblings argued playfully over who got to take pictures first. I felt invisible. I tried calling my mother. It rang twice before going to voicemail. My father didn't answer either. My siblings had their phones off. I told myself maybe they were stuck in traffic, or maybe something urgent had come up. Hope again, nabavi, painful hope. Then my phone buzzed with a notification. It wasn't a call. It was a social media post from my aunt. My entire family smiling around a cake shaped like a cartoon character. "Happy 12th birthday, Liam! Family always comes first." The caption hit harder than the picture, but the picture was enough. Every single person had made it. Even the ones who lived hours away. They remembered his birthday. They planned for it. They chose it, and they chose not to come to mine. I stared at the screen until my breath felt too thin. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet finality that felt like the closing of a door. The strange thing was, the moment it broke, something else settled, a realization sharp and painful, but clarifying I would never matter to them the way I had convinced myself I could. So I walked away, from the campus, from the disappointment, from the years of begging for scraps of affection. As I crossed the street, the wind shifted, lifting the edges of my gown. I didn't know it yet, but with each step, I was already leaving my old life behind. Reinventing myself wasn't a dramatic, cinematic moment. There was no lightning strike, no symbolic haircut, no grand declaration to the world. It was quieter than that, a slow awakening, like stepping out of a fog I didn't realize I'd been living in. When I became Elara Quinn, it felt like slipping into a version of myself I had never been allowed to be. I left my home state with a single suitcase, the name change papers tucked into a folder inside my backpack. The bus ride to my new city was long, filled with the muted rumble of the engine and the occasional crackle of the intercom. I watched the landscape shift through the dirty window, fields giving way to suburbs, suburbs dissolving into tall, uneven buildings. Each passing hour pulled me farther from the version of me that had waited on benches for people who would never come. The city I landed in was loud and alive in a way that made me feel anonymous. I rented a tiny studio above a laundromat, where the walls were thin and the ceiling leaked on rainy nights, but it was the first place that felt entirely mine. No footsteps storming down the hall, no siblings slamming doors, no passive-aggressive comments slipping under my skin, just the hum of the washing machines downstairs and the occasional smell of detergent drifting up through the vents. I bought a cheap mattress, a lamp, and a small folding table that pretended to be a desk. My days were filled with job applications and my nights with staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake, but even in the uncertainty I felt lighter. I eventually found a job at a small tech startup. It wasn't glamorous. My first tasks involved reorganizing digital files, answering customer emails, and fixing spreadsheets that made no sense. But the office had windows that opened, plants growing on every windowsill, and people who laughed loudly without apology. They asked for my opinions and actually listened when I gave them. I didn't know how to handle that kind of attention at first. Receiving kindness felt like touching something precious with shaky hands. Still, I adapted because survival had always been my strongest skill. My work ethic stood out quickly. I didn't clock out mentally the moment 5 o'clock hit. I stayed late, tinkered with ideas for improving our educational software, and took on tasks no one wanted. Part of me was driven by ambition, but another part was still running. From my old life, from the fear of being insignificant, from the echo of an empty seat at my graduation. Work filled the spaces that hurt. And then there was Mason. We met when we were assigned to the same project, and he introduced himself with a smile that felt impossible to mistrust. He had soft eyes and a voice that made everything sound gentle, even when he was talking about server issues or database crashes. He didn't ask about my past, at least not at first. He treated me like I was someone worth knowing, not a burden to carry or a problem to fix. His kindness wasn't dramatic, it showed in small moments, like bringing me coffee on mornings when I looked tired, or saving me the last slice of pizza during late-night meetings. We became friends before anything else. He noticed things. How I flinched at sudden noises, how I hesitated before accepting help, how I apologized too quickly for things that weren't my fault. One evening, after a long workday, he said, "You move like someone who learned early not to expect people to stay." I didn't respond. I didn't know how to. But he didn't push. He simply added, "I'm not in a hurry. I'll stay anyway." Over time, my circle grew wider. I met people who celebrated my little achievements, people who cheered for me without needing a reason, people who showed up because they wanted to. Slowly, painfully, beautifully, I began to trust that I didn't have to earn every ounce of affection. That sometimes love could be freely given. Becoming Alara didn't erase my scars, but it allowed me to heal around them. I built routines, friendships, and ambitions that had nothing to do with the family I'd left behind. I created a life that finally felt like it belonged to me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible, I was seen. I was chosen. I was enough. Success didn't arrive with fireworks or camera flashes. It came gradually, like sunlight creeping into a room through a half-opened curtain. One month I was helping fix bugs in the system, and the next I was pitching an idea that would reshape the company's direction entirely. The educational platform I developed wasn't meant to be revolutionary. It started as a passion project, a way to help students like me who had once felt overlooked and unheard. But the concept grew, catching the attention of our investors, then our competitors, then finally the media. Suddenly I found myself in interviews, my voice echoing across podcasts, my face appearing on articles that praised the innovative mind of Alara Quinn. Every time I saw my name on a headline, I remembered the girl who sat alone on a graduation bench, praying her family would choose her. It was almost surreal how far I'd come since that day. The recognition didn't go unnoticed. Our platform launched nationwide and the demand exploded. My inbox overflowed daily with messages from teachers who thanked me for creating a tool that helped their struggling students find confidence. Parents sent photos of their children smiling after improving in school. Those messages mattered more to me than any award. They were proof that my pain had grown into something meaningful, something that helped others in ways I never imagined. But the higher I climbed, the thinner the air became. Attention brought curiosity, and curiosity brought digging. People wanted to know who Alara Quinn was before she became the woman they admired. My team tried to protect my privacy, but information has a way of unraveling when enough hands tug at the thread. One morning, my assistant burst into my office with her laptop in hand, her expression twisted with worry. She hesitated before speaking, as if afraid her words might break something fragile. "You need to see this," she said, placing the laptop on my desk. A journalist had published an article connecting my new identity to my old one. There it was, my birth name, my hometown, photos from college, even fragments of the life I had so carefully buried. The comments were already flooded with people demanding answers, theorizing, speculating. The article painted me as a mysterious figure who reinvented herself overnight, a woman with a hidden past. Some comments were kind, others cruel, but they all had one thing in common. They made me visible to people I never wanted to see me again. My phone vibrated endlessly for the next several hours. Unknown numbers, voicemails, texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. At first, I ignored them. Then one name appeared on my screen, my mother. The shock made me drop the phone onto my desk before I could stop myself. I stared at it ringing, my chest tightening with old emotions I thought I'd grown out of. When it went to voicemail, a second call came immediately, this time from my father. Then my sister. Then relatives, neighbors, people who once barely acknowledged my existence. They were all reaching out, suddenly eager to reconnect with the daughter who had become a public success. Curiosity eventually pushed me to listen to the first voicemail. My mother's voice was syrupy sweet in a way that felt foreign and hollow. "Isla, honey, we saw the news. We're so proud of you. We always knew you'd do great things. It would mean a lot to us if you'd come home for a visit. People here are talking about you nonstop. Let's put the past behind us." My stomach twisted at the false warmth. They weren't proud of me. They were proud of the reflected glow they could now claim. I stared at my reflection in the darkened screen of my phone, imagining the girl I used to be falling for this kind of manipulative affection. But Elora wasn't Isla, and I wasn't desperate for their approval anymore. Yet something in me needed closure, not their apology, not their acceptance, but the final act of severing the last invisible thread that tied me to them. So when they invited me to come home, I agreed. I didn't tell Mason at first, not because I wanted to hide it from him, but because I didn't know how to put the mix of emotions into words. When I finally told him, he simply took my hand and said, "If you're going, you're not going alone." Walking back into my hometown after all those years felt like stepping into a ghost story where I was both the haunted and the haunting. People recognized me from the news, offering polite greetings and curious glances. My family home looked smaller than I remembered, the paint chipping, the yard unkempt, yet the memories hit me with full force. When the front door opened, my parents stood there with awkward smiles and stiff embraces. Their house felt unfamiliar, as though time had moved forward without me. As we sat in the living room, I realized something startlingly simple: I didn't need their validation anymore. I wasn't here to reclaim anything. I was here to let it go. The confrontation was inevitable, and the truth was still waiting to be spoken. And when it finally came, it would change everything. Not for me, but for them. The house felt smaller than it used to, as if shrinking under the weight of everything unspoken. My parents sat across from me on the couch, trying to act natural, but nothing about the moment felt real. They didn't ask how I'd been all those years or what my life looked like now. Instead, they tiptoed around questions that would make them look caring without requiring them to actually be so. Mason stayed close beside me, sensing the tension in the room. His presence grounded me, a quiet reminder that I wasn't the lonely girl they once dismissed. My father cleared his throat and folded his hands as though preparing for a business meeting. "You disappearing like that, it caused a lot of concern," he said. His tone made it sound like I had inconvenienced them, like I owed them an apology for saving myself. I let the words settle, feeling no urge to defend myself. My mother chimed in next, her voice coated with false warmth. "We didn't know what happened to you. You should have told us where you were going." I almost laughed at the absurdity. Told them. The same people who chose a children's birthday party over my graduation. The same people who had overlooked every milestone I'd fought for. Telling them would have required believing they would care. And I had stopped believing that a long time ago. Mason placed his hand gently on mine, encouraging without pushing. I took a slow breath. "You knew exactly why I left," I said quietly. "You made it clear I wasn't a priority. My graduation wasn't important to you. I was never important to you." My mother's face twitched, the truth hitting her pride like a slap. My father opened his mouth to argue, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Please don't insult both of us with lies. I saw the pictures. You remembered that day. You just didn't remember me." The room fell into a heavy silence. I could almost hear the walls exhaling around us. My mother looked away, fiddling with a coaster on the coffee table. "Families make mistakes," she murmured. "You can't hold on to one moment forever. One moment, I said, my voice steady. It wasn't one moment, it was years of moments. Years of being overlooked, ignored, dismissed. Graduation was just the final proof. My father shifted sharply in his seat. Well, you've become successful. Everything worked out, didn't it? You should be grateful we pushed you to be independent. There it was. The final confirmation of how little they understood. I felt a strange peace wash over me, like stepping out of a storm. I became successful because I had to. Because I learned early that if I didn't fight for myself, no one else would. You don't get to claim any part of that. I stood, and Mason rose with me. My parents looked startled, as though shocked I wasn't playing into their narrative. My mother reached out in panic. Alara, I corrected softly but firmly. That's the name I chose. It's the life I built. And it's a life without you. Her hand froze midair. It was only then, when she looked into my eyes and realized I truly meant every word, that something in her expression cracked. Regret, fear, loss, maybe all of them, but none of it was enough. I didn't come here to reconnect, I said. I came to close the door that should have been closed years ago. I walked toward the entryway, memories brushing against me like shadows. Mason placed a reassuring hand on my back as we stepped outside. The air felt clearer, lighter, as though the town itself was exhaling with me. When we reached the driveway, I turned back once, not out of longing but closure. The house no longer looked like a home I'd lost. Just a building holding ghosts that no longer had the power to haunt me. Mason squeezed my hand. You okay? He asked. I nodded. For the first time, yes. The drive back was quiet but peaceful. The further we got from the house, the more I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I wasn't running anymore, I wasn't hiding. I had faced the past and walked away on my own terms. That night, in my apartment filled with warmth and laughter, I wrote a letter to the girl I once was. I told her she had done the bravest thing by leaving. That she had freed us. That she had built a life where love wasn't conditional or performative. And as I finished writing, I realized something profound. My revenge wasn't anger or bitterness. It was the quiet, steady joy of living a life they never believed I could have. It was choosing peace over pain. It was becoming someone they could never break again.